Start out by saying congratulations to Solo Miner on block 904,989 an hour ago. Congrats. They had 200 petahash solo mining. That's insane, actually. I'm not going to solo mine with 200 petahash, but you can, and it paid off. Oh, yeah, you got to plug that in. We're going to get switching mics. Hold on, let me do the... Zach, could you post about from the space account? Thanks, bud. All right, huge turnout. Woo! It's summer, it's whatever. But hey, guess what? Y'all's odds are nice for winning this beautiful S19 provided to you by Compass Mining. Welcome to the Compass Mining Technical Mining Operations Meetup. We got some news about the name at the end, and spoiler alert, we're getting a new name because the name is a mouthful, and also the word technical is the reason there's like 5 people here. But so let's go over to the agenda. Just going to do a little chit chat. And good thing about a small crowd is that I want to do this very conversationally. So if y'all have questions, feel free to raise your hand. And we're going to have dedicated Q&A at the end. But if there's something that catches your ear, you want to, ask for details about something, feel free to raise your hand. We love the conversation. We're going to go through some hot mining jobs, and then we're going to get into the programming. And right now we have 2 positions in West Texas open at Compass Mining for site lead and a data center tech 1. Data center tech 1, at least for Compass, is pretty entry level. So you don't necessarily need any experience in the field previously. If you are wanting to get into the field, it's a great entry spot to kind of get your experience. But of course, we do want to make sure that you are ready to work in a Bitcoin mining facility. Site lead, we are ideally looking for 5+ years of experience, but if y'all have any questions about that, come find me and ask me about it. And also in Vegas, CleanSpark is hiring for a facilities superintendent, and this is going to be one of those roles where you're overseeing several sites. I think that it's going to be more regional, a little less hands-on day-to-day, but CleanSpark is a great friend of ours. And then Hut 8, also in the great state of West Texas, because it's its own state, has another data center tech opening in Pecos. So all good roles there that I'm familiar with being on the field. If you have any questions about working in the field, come find me. I'm happy to talk about it. In fact, people are tired of me talking about it. Sorry, Mom. The speakers, Curtis always uses my profile picture from Twitter, which it's never really one that you want on the panel. But yeah, I'm Tatum. I am the large scale project lead at Compass Mining. Would love to connect with you all. Follow me on Twitter. Tatum turn up on everything. If you want to hit me up on Telegram, that's the best way. And then my guest here is Karun McIncherry. He's the director of hosting services at Compass Mining. Karun, give us a little introduction. Who is Karun McIncherry?
Thank you, Compass. Thank you, Tatum. So, like you said, Director of Hosting Services at Compass Mining. Main responsibility is creating and implementing strategy for our hosting business. That's our core hosting business at Compass Mining. In case you guys don't know, I'm sure most of you do, if not all, but Compass Mining is an online marketplace where we provide hosting solutions to customers of all sizes. So whether you want to mine with 1 machine or 10,000 machines, we're there to help you with that.
Yeah, and so we're going to get into that. That's the topic today. We're going over the hosting model of Bitcoin mining. And Curtis put this in here, so I guess he wants me to talk about it. I got a new role at Compass. I'm the large-scale project lead. I was a field deployment technician. Thank you. All right, thank you. Stop, guys. I'm going to get Curtis to put more slides like this. But I'm doing a lot of the projects. I'm kind of overseeing some of that stuff. We offer an array of services from cleaning, testing, procurement, and all of that goes through our Denver service center right here, literally like 7 minutes away. And we offer all sorts of different services for large-scale clients. If you have any connections that might want to look at us, feel free to come find me. I'd love to talk about that too. But you know what? Why don't we get into it? So we're talking about the hosting model, and Karun, go ahead and start off just telling me what is hosting when talking about mining, because I mean that's what a lot of people in the space already know about, but like if someone wanting to just get in, this might be a good option.
Yeah, for sure. So hosting is a service that provides the facility, the operations, and the maintenance for customers that are looking to mine Bitcoin. So as some of you may know, it's difficult to mine at home. It can be loud, it can be hot. You might get in trouble with your family. And so hosting providers have kind of popped up in I'd say the last 10 years to provide a solution for customers that are looking to mine, whether it's Bitcoin or altcoins. Another big thing that hosting providers can provide is kind of the economies of scale. So also, if you were to mine, at your house, it's probably going to be very expensive. Hosting providers usually will have access to lower electricity rates through a number of methods, and they're able to kind of pass that down to their customers to make it feasible to mine on a longer term.
So hosting is kind of the opposite, not necessarily the opposite, but it's on the other hand of self-mining is what we're kind of looking at it as. So with self-mining, you're basically trying to optimize your own ROI because you're mining for yourself. Those are your machines, those are your rewards. With hosting, you're kind of shifting the goals altogether where you're trying to satisfy the customers. So if I have my own megawatt of miners, say like 350 J Pros or something like that, I'm not going to care about 10 being offline if I'm self-mining. But if I'm hosting and 10 of those go off, that there's an array of different things that make those 10 more important, right? So like, what's that look like on like an MOQ of one scale versus hosting for customers versus, what do those models look like when you're looking at different hosting models?
Definitely. So, just to take a step back, the customer is usually paying, it can differ, but usually a monthly fee, or it can be a daily fee or some type of regular fee where they're paying for the electricity that the miner consumes, they're paying the hosting provider for the space, for the operations, for the preventative and regular maintenance, right? And then in exchange, all the mining rewards are going to the customer. So you can imagine, like Tatum brought up, if you have one miner and that's all you are mining with, and that goes down, you're gonna be very upset, right? Like you're very uptime is very important to you. You want to make sure that your miner is online. But like you mentioned, if you have thousands of machines, which a lot of these self miners do, right? Especially if you look at like the public companies, you're not going to be that worried when 10, 15, 20, even 100, depending on your size, go down. And so that creates a different risk profile, different commitments that a host has to adhere to compared to a self-miner.
Yeah, so in other words, from a customer perspective, the hosting company is everything to them, but from the operator's perspective, that MOQ of one, that one miner that I have is like a speck on a graph, basically.
Exactly, yeah. And so if you're a host and your commitment and you're willing to serve MOQ1 customers, you have a promise to them to keep that miner up. And so you really have to change your operations compared to a self-miner to maximize uptime. Whereas a self-miner, right, they're more focused on their responsibilities ROI, right? And so uptime might not be as important to them, especially if they have complex energy agreements where they're allowed to go offline and they're getting paid for curtailing because of some demand response program. Whereas as a host, like the operations are very significantly different if your goal is to keep everyone online as much as possible.
So if you're hosting for a customer, what difference does that look like? Because it's very hands-on. You're in constant communications with customers, whether it's plebs who have one miner or it's larger customers who just don't have the ability to mine for themselves, but they have maybe 100 miners with us or something. What does that look like on the communication side? How hands-on is that?
Yeah, it's very hands-on, especially if you're dealing with customers that only have 1 to 5 units, right? So if you're a host, like you better have a good customer support department. You better have good remote monitoring You better have operators that understand, hey, what is the goal that you're trying to do for your customers? It's not necessary to maximize the revenue or the profitability of the machine. It's more making sure it's online. And a big thing around customer support and something that we do at Compass is education. So it's the summertime. It's very hot. We're seeing a lot of curtailing across the nation, not just in Texas, which people always like to talk about, right? But it's everywhere. And so you have to explain those things to customers, especially if mining is kind of their first foray into the digital asset space, let alone mining or Bitcoin. So you have to have the resources to kind of backstop as a host to explain and educate your customers and ensure to them that you're providing a good service.
The worst thing is whenever someone starts mining with a hosted company in the summer, and then it's like, oh, my miners hasn't been online. It's like, oh, well, yeah, sorry, that's expected. Yeah, at Compass, we have our status page where we have all of our statuses, all of our sites, and if they're operational or curtailing or maintenance, anything like that. And also, like, I mean, downtime is expected. Curtailment is something that happens, especially in the summer, all the time. And then that winter storm, I think in 21 or 22, where like Bitcoin miners literally saved Texas. Like they directly saved lives. And that's just something that's to be expected. So obviously there's two different perspectives looking at hosting, because on a customer perspective, I'm like, maybe this is for me if I can't mine in my apartment or my house or something like that. Then you have the actual operation side of things. Can you explain, like, if I'm a customer, I'm expecting monthly bills, I'm expecting to look at my miner on my pool, see that it's online, and then get those rewards. But what's happening on the back end from the operator's perspective?
Yeah, so for sure, like you said, like as a customer, you're not really focused on a number of things. You're just focused on uptime. You're looking at your pool account. I'm guilty of that, as I'm a retail miner myself. Like, you know, I love seeing the rewards come in and getting that notification daily. And then you're billing, whether it's monthly, daily, whatever. Like Tatum said, on the operator side, especially if you're a large host and you have multiple sites that you're working with, there's a lot going on. You have to deal with numerous customers. So like I said, at Compass, we have 6,000 customers. We want to make sure they're all satisfied, every single one. We have over 20 sites across North America. You have to manage those relationships, and not every contract with between a host and a facility provider is going to look the same. You, as a host, you may have commitments to the facility provider, which allows you to get a lower energy cost, which then makes mining feasible for your customers. So, for example, there are cases like it's called like take or pay, where you're required to use a certain amount of utilization at the facility, and so you have to manage that capacity. You have to make sure you have spares. You have to make sure your remote monitoring team is plugged in and understands those situations so that they can send more miners, or they can talk to the operators on ground and figure out what's going on so that you're not paying penalties and raising your energy costs, which then unfortunately you likely will have to pass off to your customers if you do a bad job for a long time. So there's a lot going on in the background. That's just in this. So what I just explained was when you're dealing with third-party facilities. If you have your own facility as a hosting provider, now you need to understand energy agreements. You need to understand the energy market you're in. How do I optimize revenue and profitability while still providing a good service, right? In the case of a self-miner, it might make sense to curtail 30% of the time, like we mentioned, so that you get a 3-cent, 4-cent power. You can't do that as a host. You know, you're going to lose customers unless you somehow get into some type of complex relationship where you're passing off those savings to customers. But when you're dealing with over 1,000, 2,000 customers, that gets very difficult very fast. And so, you know, really being able to manage all these moving pieces, looking at all of your facilities as a whole, making sure you're maximizing utilization, uptime, and then at the same time driving revenue, there's a lot going on, yeah.
Another thing I want to emphasize on this part that one needs some heavy input from you is there's no cookie cutter model basically for hosting. Like you have profit share, you have I don't know what you call what I would call regular, but then you also, like you were talking about, you have different agreements with the power company, take or pay. You maybe have a dynamic rate or something like that. What all does that look like on the financial side of things?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'd say the most regular or typical relationship is as a hosting provider. Let's say you're dealing with a third party. You're going to pay some flat rate, right? You're going to have extra costs on top of that, your operating expenses, your overhead costs, and then you're going to turn around and sell that at a higher rate to your customer, and hopefully at a rate that where the customer is able to mine and be able to be sustainable for a long time, right? So that's probably the most typical and regular type of hosting arrangement between a facility, a hosting provider, and then the customer. If we still stay in this realm of where the hosting provider is sitting in the middle, it can get more complex. There are times when the hosting provider can provide, can take on the power pricing risk. So the facility itself might not be getting a flat rate from the utility, right? That might be very variable over time. That depends on the time of the year, what's going on with the energy markets, all that type of thing. And so in that sense, you have, as a host, you really have to do due diligence around that energy market and make sure that you can understand the power pricing, you're okay with the risk, you can manage the risk, and you can manage it in such a way to still provide high uptime to your customers and that the rate is low enough, right? And then also you can get even more complex. You can have, as a host, you can have contracts with your facility where the rate differs based off hash price. So now you're bringing in Bitcoin mining economics, right? When hash price is ripping, maybe you are agreeing to pay a higher energy rate because you know that by paying that higher energy rate, that will let the facility still consume power at a high uptime. And then also on the back end, on your customers, they're likely not going to default. They're going to continue mining because hash price is high and they can be sustainable. But figuring out those economics, if you're dealing with a retail customer, they don't want to see a variable power rate for most of the time. Most retail customers don't want that. They just want to pay a flat rate and be able to kind of project out what is their mining going to look like.
Yeah, I'm not wanting to. Oh no, I have to pay like $100 more this month.
Yeah, that would be ridiculous, right? Sometimes you can get enterprise customers, people who have 1,000, 2,000 plus machines who've been in the space for a while. They kind of understand and they can build a business model around that and get comfortable with the risks themselves. But for the most part, if you're a retail provider, you're gonna pass off a flat rate to the customer, and so whatever you're paying on the supply side, you better be comfortable with, or else you'll be out of business pretty fast. And I think we saw a lot of that at the last bear market, unfortunately, right? So yeah, those are kind of the cases where you're dealing with a third-party provider. I briefly mentioned it before, but if you're, as a hosting provider, you own the infrastructure, you own the site, you own the on-site operations, again, you're just going to have to get real comfortable with the utility agreement, with the how energy pricing works in that market specifically. This is something I'm learning on the fly currently at one of our new facilities in Iowa. I never expected to be looking at weather so much in my life, and that's what I'm doing now. And literally every day I log on, and that's the first thing I'm looking at is weather.
I just want to interject and say the first thing in our facility call every morning is the weather report for all of our sites. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you become a weather expert, or you think you become a weather expert pretty fast. And at least, looking at on my weather app, I've got all of our sites and stuff, and just looking and trying to think about, okay, how is this going to affect uptime today and those type of things. And then you did mention profit share, so maybe I'll get into that a little bit. So you can have, like I said, more complex relationships with your customers, especially if they're more enterprise, where you do some type of profit share. So because you have access to lower rates as a host, you may pass off that actual lower rate to your enterprise customer, and in exchange, the customer is bringing the hardware, right? It depends on the hardware. It can definitely change depending on if it's like a good efficient model, like let's say an S21 versus an S19. But what you can get into these complex relationships where the mining rewards or the profit that's received after paying the electricity, you're sharing between the customer and between the host itself. So, why doesn't everyone do that? Because it's probably not feasible at the higher flat hosting rates. But if you're willing to pass off as a host a lower rate to a customer, and you're able to come to some type of agreement, you're able to kind of share in the proceeds. And as a host, I think it's important to kind of have different types of arrangements. You don't want to just stick to one. As a host, I particularly like that, especially on days like today, right? Like I'm getting exposure to Bitcoin, and now Bitcoin's ripping. That's much better than me getting a flat hosting rate that's probably lower than what the Bitcoin rate is of being mined, or the value of that Bitcoin that's being mined that day. So it's a good way to kind of get exposure to Bitcoin price volatility in both ways, right? It going up and it going down. But also can offer lower hosting costs to your end customer, and again, make them more sustainable.
Yeah, also, I forgot to mention, I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. Today, July 10th, we hit an all-time high of $116,000. So we're in a room of winners, and if you're watching and you don't have Bitcoin, it's not too late. Thank you for that in-depth answer. That was exactly what I was looking for, because I mean, at the higher level, there's a lot that goes into it. And in fact, kind of want to go into the multiple different types of agreements that you have, service level agreements that you have, whether it's me who has one or two miners with Compass Mining, or maybe it's a customer that sends you, 10 megawatts of their miners to host or something like that. What does that look like as far as on a hosting side of things? Because there's got to be, step ups of where your I guess concierge level kind of increases, or maybe there's more in-depth discussions. Because no one reached out to me whenever I bought my first miner and was like, hey, let's talk about deals, because I mean, it was a single miner. But that happens with larger scale clients, right?
Yeah, for sure. So like, I think we kind of talked about the flat hosting model, right? Or you can get complex with the enterprise customers and do some type of profit share. But there's a lot of things that can change, like even the payment timing, right? So like if you're a retail customer, depending on which provider you're using, you're most likely prepaying for the electricity. You're prepaying monthly. And the reason behind that is because, just simply being a retail customer, whether it's fair or not, you're assessed a higher delinquency risk. So the hosting provider wants to make sure they're collecting that money and that they're not responsible for the electricity if you were to default, right? But if you're bringing a lot of hardware, that's kind of collateral for the hosting provider, and the hosting provider might get more lenient on something like the payment terms. So not just, now maybe as a customer, you're not prepaying monthly, but you're paying after. You're paying for only the energy that you're actually consuming that you can measure after the month is over. Also, things like deposits, right? Like if you're a retail customer, you may pay higher in deposits again because you're perceived as a higher delinquency risk. If you're someone bringing 10 megawatts of machines, okay, maybe you don't need 2-3 months of deposit, because as a hosting provider, if that customer defaults, you have the right to take over those machines yourself and mine yourself, and that's the collateral. So as a host, it's really like, when you're building out these contracts or building out the business relationship, you have to think through kind of all of these risk scenarios. Obviously, everyone wants Bitcoin to rip. Everyone wants everyone to be happy and profitable. But you have to be really cognizant of, like, what are the situations when Bitcoin isn't ripping, and maybe it's unprofitable for this customer to mine, or maybe it's something outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem that's causing them to default. They have other liabilities. They have other businesses, and they just can't fund this business anymore, So you have to build in those protections, things like the deposit, the prepayment of the monthly terms. Term length is another thing that can change, right? Like, typically if you're a retail customer, you're probably doing on an annual basis terms. Maybe if you're an enterprise client, you'd be more willing to do a shorter term contract if you're able to manage that capacity. As a host, you don't want to take on like a month-to-month customer, let's say, of like 20 megawatts, and then they say on month 3, hey, I'm out of here. And then as a host, you have commitments to the facility. Now, you're screwed, right? So you need to be able to think thoughtfully of like, okay, what happens if this guy wants to terminate? Do I have backups in place in order to fulfill my commitments to the power, to the facilities and whatnot, where I'm paying my own fees? So that's mostly like around the payment terms. Obviously, it depends on like the machine type, right? That can kind of change your mind about, what is the default risk? What are the economics on this? Is that something now where it's an S21 versus a J Pro? As a host, I'd rather do a profit share with an S21, right? Because I'm getting more rewards, obviously, right? So things like that.
Yeah, as you can tell, there's a lot more on the operation side than on the customer side.
But that's the goal, right? Like we're in
taking
this
care
business-
of it.
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
trying to make it easy for the customer. But,
Yeah, and like I
it's not
said,
always-
whenever I mention like I expect, my monthly invoice, and then I want to see my hash rate, and I want to get my rewards. If that's all I have to care about, then that's awesome. That's best case scenario. Now the big question that I have zero insight on is liabilities, because I mean these facilities are eyesores and ear sores, so they're a target for tomfoolery or whatever, theft, and also noise complaints from locals. Then also there's natural disasters that happen all the time. I give you my miner, I'm trusting you to run it, and then a lightning strikes the container or something. Where does all of that liability stand? What does that mean for me if this container does get struck by lightning and my miner just happens to be the one that attracted it and is exploded? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, and so I feel like I've learned a lot because I had an idea of like where the liabilities should fall when I started as a customer at Compass, actually, as a retail miner. And so I think in my head I was like, oh, I don't have any liability and it's all on the host. And as a host, you kind of want to be able to take off as much liability as possible from the customer, right? At Compass, what we specifically do is we tell the customer, hey, the only thing you're responsible for is insurance. And even like insurance on your miner, like we provide a solution for that. But our goal is to make it as easy as possible to mine, right? And so we don't want them to have to think about downtime or the infrastructure failing. Also, like as a host, if we don't own that infrastructure or we don't own that site, we don't want to take on liability, right? Like if infrastructure fails, like that's not our responsibility technically. And so you have to make sure the contracts are written in such a way where that liability is being assessed to the proper parties for any type of liability. And insurance plays a big part of that. And so typically if you're a host and you're dealing with a third party site, like at Compass, we'll always insist of like the site liability, the infrastructure liability, that's all on you. And you have to have adequate insurance and show us proof of insurance that you have that liability covered if things were to happen, right? On the host side, the liability that we want to take on, especially if we're operating, is our guys operating. Like if we have a rogue employee or if they make a big mistake, like yes, I think to be fair, that's our fault, then we should take on that liability. And so we have insurance to protect ourselves. That being said, okay, great. Liability is covered by the facility, liability is covered by the host. The customer knows, okay, the liability of the actual machine, if something was to happen, is on you. And when I say something was to happen, like not at fault of the operator or the host, right? But at the end of the day, if the infrastructure goes down, it's not the customer's fault, and now they're offline, right? So you have to get really creative, especially when you're dealing with retail clients, to provide solutions for them when it's not their fault or it's not your fault, but still make them happy, right? So one thing at Compass that we do is we have a portion of our fleet that is self-mining, and it's self-mining at all times. And that's something we're monitoring, and my team specifically is monitoring every day. If we see customers that are experiencing excessive downtime, whether that's because of some type of repair or a relocation event, or if unfortunately like infrastructure is down and we expect it to be down for a month, we're going to point that hash rate to you to make you whole, because we know that's an awful situation to be. Especially if you're being forced to prepay monthly your electricity bill. That's not fair to you, right? And so we want to be able to provide things like that, like temporary hash rate that we can point to you so that you're still collecting the rewards. Imagine today if infrastructure went down and you're a retail
This would be an
miner,
awful day for your miner to go down.
Yeah.
That would just feel like a slap to the face.
Think of the number of Zendesk tickets, right? We've gone a little creative too, where not only will we provide temporary hash rate, but we had a situation, for example, in Canada, and maybe you guys had heard about it, but like in the last 9-12 months, there was a lot of difficulties, forget about the cost, but there was a lot of difficulties of importing miners into the country, and a lot of shipments were getting stopped, like for miners across the industry. And so to help customers out in that situation, we just provided swaps for them at free. Like, hey, we have the same exact miner hashing in a US facility. We have to close down this Canada facility for whatever reason, because maybe the contract is up or we're not happy with the performance, whatever it is. I'm just giving examples. You know, your miner, there's a chance your miner might get stuck at the border. And we want to be upfront and transparent with that to you. But in exchange, we're going to help give you options so that you're not down. So we would give them a replacement miner if that's what they ask for. We, also if for whatever reason you want to stop mining with us, you can end your hosting contract, no penalty. We'll give you the opportunity to upgrade your machine. So that's something we're very passionate about, getting our customers to upgrade to the latest gens. So just, you can worry about liability and make sure, like, as a host, your ass is covered and everything. But at the end of the day, even if your ass is covered and your customers are offline, you're not going to be successful for a long time. And so you have to get creative with the solutions for your customers.
He mentioned if we have a rogue employee, I'm the reason that he gave that example. We don't talk about October 2023. For legal reasons, that was a joke, if you're watching Compass. Let's talk about what it takes to win in hosting, what makes it successful, because we know that mining is ever-changing. It's growing every day, extremely fast, rapidly. The winners are going to be the veterans, but if someone watching or in this room wants to start their own hosting business, what are some key things that you think that you think they could learn from veterans like Compass Mining or other hosting sites that would be, jumpstart them? Because obviously you're not going to get it perfect the first try. We can help you out with that. So what are some of those big things that you want to point out?
I think if you're dealing with third-party facilities, it's being very clear and transparent and setting the expectations of like what you expect from them, and not just contractually, but following up with them, having regular touch points. Our remote monitoring and operations team do a great job of that, of like setting expectations and continuing to set those expectations with the third-party facility providers. Sometimes these third-party facility providers might be used to customers that have thousands of units. And from their vantage point, Compass is that type of client, right? Like, we're bringing thousands of clients. They're not dealing with the retail customers, Compass is. But if you kind of drill into them and you have contractual protections that, like, hey, uptime is very important to me. And, like, I don't care if it's one mine or two miners. Like, we need processes to get in place where that miner is back online ASAP. So, even if you have to go and reboot it or take it offline, send it for RMA, setting SLAs in terms of timing of like what you're expecting that miner to be back online. That's very important to us. And like, larger customers of these facility providers might not care as much about that, right? But like our customers do, because we have a large contingent of customers that have, those 1 to 5 miners. And so just being very clear with the facilities and, saying these are our expectations, this is what we're trying to do for our customers, and this is why we need it. And you as a hosting provider, you might have to pay a little extra for that, because that is a lot of work, dealing with bringing back a miner online every time it goes down, right? And then I'll pause there on the facility side and talk more about customer. I know I mentioned...
If I could I interject? Please. On the facility side? That's something that, like, Compass has, I guess, quote unquote, poisoned me. And if I work at a different mining company, I would be very different, because it's like with us on the field, if a miner goes down, I'm a customer. So if a miner goes down, I'm immediately like, I want to fix that as fast as possible. At our service center, all of our miners, they get relocated or anything, they come through us. We want to have that miner in our facility as little time as possible. Whereas if I'm self-mining and I just see that my hash rate dropped 100 terahash out of the 30 petahash that I have online, I'm going to get to that when I want to. I don't care. But if I'm a hosting provider and that I'm 100 terahash down, that means one miner's down. What if that's my miner? I want that up, and that's the only miner that I have. So like, I'm always in the field. We are always like on top of it, trying to make sure that we're maximizing our hash rate as much as possible. Whereas self-mining, you may not care about it until it's like enough to actually change the course of your projections and stuff like that. So that's something from the field side I wanted to point out.
You just got promoted and you're talking about working for other mining companies?
Hold on. I don't know how to get out of this. Karun, keep going, actually.
Okay, I'll keep going. I'll actually stick on the facility side because I know this is something like we're both very passionate about. You know, one thing we realized because of how demanding we are as a large customer for these facility providers, it's, you know, it just made more sense for us to operate. And so when we first started, it was all third-party facilities. Now today, we're over 50% is managed by Compass Operations. And so it's our own team that we've developed, and we now negotiate with the facilities to allow them on-site operations. And in exchange for that, sometimes we do get a lower rate. Right now, the facility doesn't have to pay staff to go staff that mining site. It's our own guys, and we think we know best. We've been in every type of mining site that you can think of, you know, whether it's like a woodshed, containers, large retrofit buildings, you know. There's a lot that we've been in, and so our team has learned a lot, and we believe like we're the best operators for our customers. And so what we've strategically done, we'll always try to be the ones when we're negotiating with facilities to operate it ourselves. And to be frank, like the third-party operators that we have today, those are the ones that we've trusted and renewed, you know. And so the ones that haven't done a good job for us in the past few years,
We've been through several.
yeah, we've decided, okay, hey, like, thanks for the relationship. You know, we're going to move on and find another facility or find another arrangement that works best for our customers. And so that's why we have a real focus on wanting our own guys to operate, because we know our customers are needy. We're very upfront about that, and we just want to serve them.
It's also very beneficial to have, I guess you can say, personal boots on the ground, because all of our operators that we operate, like I'm talking to them every day, whether it's within Compass meetings or if it's just like, you know, back and forth, like these are my friends too. And like being able to just easily pop into a meeting and be like, hey, I need X amount of fans in this facility or something. That's so much easier than going through 3 or 4 different channels with third-party operators and seeing like, do y'all need fans? And then waiting a week to get a response and then send those out. And it minimizing those communication channels is very beneficial, especially when you're able to set those expectations of what you want the facility to look like and run like. You can do that a lot better when it's like your own people.
100%. Like even on systems, right? Like integrating with a third-party system, there's, you know, it takes time. You have to get comfortable. When we're dealing with a third-party site, you know, it might take 1 month, 2 months to finally get like very comfortable and get into a nice cadence. When it's a Compass-operated site, it's like we hit the ground running because we're all using the same systems. We know our communication style. We have regular touch points, like if not daily, you know, very, very frequent. And so, yeah, again, another big reason, like if you're as a host and you're trying to serve MOQ1 and you have demanding customers, if you want to be successful, like highly encourage you to build out your operations team, for sure.
So not on the facility side, what are some other things that I would want to think about before making my own hosting business?
Maybe I'll talk about the customer side.
Yeah.
So, I think I already mentioned before, like customer education. Like I'm a big proponent of that, right? And you know, when Compass started and we really exploded back in 21, that was like during the bull run, right? And so we had a lot of people that jumped into Bitcoin, and then it's like, you know, you jump into Bitcoin, then you start looking at mining, right? Like I'm sure everyone's kind of done that. And
that's exactly how it happened for me.
Yeah, same. Me too. Maybe I'm talking from personal experience as well. But you know, so really educating your customers, I think is a very, very important if you're going to be a host and you're going to serve and you're willing to serve new entrants into the space. Another thing is just providing solutions to them. You know, so one thing that like I mentioned, like offering upgrades and things like that, or the ability to swap for your customers. So like at Compass, we've upgraded about like, I want to say it might be like 20,000 of our customer machines during our 4 years. So those are customers that had older gen and they decided, probably because of profitability, but they might be, you know, there might be other reasons where they just wanted more hash. So, you know, being able to go to them and say, hey, you can exchange this miner, just kind of like a phone trade-in program, right? Maybe you have to pay a little bit and you'll get upgraded to the latest gen hardware, and that'll help you kind of survive to the next halving if that is your motivating profitability. One thing I will mention, and I'm always kind of fascinated by this, like if I talk to retail customers or even if you just kind of look at the data, I think one mistake that I'm guilty of falling into is always thinking like our customers are just purely profit driven. That's not the case, you know, like they might have other reasons why they want mine, whether it's, you know, they want to acquire the Bitcoin not through an exchange, right? Like they just kind of want, maybe they want no KYC for whatever reason, or they just want hash rate. They have, or if they're a business, they like the tax write-offs, right? Like there's ways you can depreciate the hardware or your business.
I started mining just as a Bitcoin faucet. That was why I did.
Yeah, it's a great way to DCA, right? And so like maybe if you're like super bullish on Bitcoin, you don't care if you're unprofitable mining and paying a premium because there's other benefits that outweigh it, but you're able to get DCA into Bitcoin in another way. Some people are very ideological, right? Like they want to support the network, they want to help decentralize the hash rate, those type of things. So that's another thing as a host, like don't get, and again, like I said, I'm guilty of this, don't get stuck in your ways of thinking everyone's profitability driven or, you know, just at the end of the day wants a profitable miner for the long term. Try and understand what is your customers want and then provide the solutions to them.
So, what about the future? Are we going to continue to rely, or not necessarily rely, but is hosting as a business going to continue on? Is there going to be a different angle on it in the future? What does the future for Bitcoin mining look like?
Yeah, I think, you know, I always find this topic interesting because I think the easy thing to always say is like, oh, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, like hosting is going to die out, right? Like I heard that even when I entered the industry, like, oh, in 5 years, hosting isn't going to be a profitable business or like a sustainable business. But kind of going back to what I was talking about, the customers, like you might not have customers that are always worried about profit, right? Like if you're looking for people that are want other reasons to mine Bitcoin, someone out there has to provide a solution to them, right? Especially if they don't have the funds to buy thousands and thousands of machines. That being said, obviously, you know, you do want people to be profitable for at least the majority of them because then they'll be happy and you're able to sustain a business model. So when you think about it in terms of profitability, okay, as a host, how do I, for the long term, offer a hosting business? And I think one of the things that we've come to the conclusion pretty quickly at Compass is vertical integration, right? So first we started with the operations. Now it's building out the sites or owning the site and the land where the infrastructure is. And so the number one thing I would say as a host, if you're looking to survive long term, is definitely vertical integration and being able to get closer to that source of energy.
So, in a sense, are you saying kind of minimize points of failure with the vertical integration, where you're like solely, you want to get as close to being the sole entity, basically?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'll do a little plug because I was involved in this, but our Iowa facility we announced recently is our first fully owned and operated facility, and I got to see that come online, and I'm pretty excited about that one. It feels like home, you know. It's our. I feel like it's our flagship. So go check out. We have videos on our Twitter, Compass_mining, about that. I think we have a video, either it already came out or it's coming out from the Hobbyist Miner. That was a tour. Did that come out already? Yeah. Compass Mining on YouTube also. Feel free to go check us out. But that's about everything. But we dedicated this time for Q&A. And I know we covered a lot going on here. But any questions from the customer perspective or the operator perspective, anything that y'all have immediately? It's going to be real embarrassing if it's no. I figured it would be, and that's okay. You know, we can just go right over that. It's summer. No one's here. Also, we wanted to plug the space events coming up. We got BitDevs. That's on the first. What's that date say? Wait, July 17th. Did we already have? Wait, we might or might not have BitDevs next week. I don't know. I thought we already had BitDevs this month, but. Bitcoin and beer. Actually, oops, that was a mistake. The Bitcoin beer and beats meetup and Bitcoin and beer are the same ones. I'll actually be DJing at that event next Friday. It'll be me, Zach, who was just here and he left, and then DJ Valerie B. Love. We're going to be going 8 to midnight. I'll be closing it down. And then for none of you guys here, but for all the ladies watching online, we love y'all. Women in Bitcoin monthly meetup is also going to be happening in August. These are just the events between this and our next mining meetup. And then another one, I want everyone to invite whoever they know, whether it's their best friend or someone they just found on the street. Come to the Bitcoin Basics intro discussion. It's going to be really good. We're going to have a lot of workshops, a lot of intimate Q&A about just what is Bitcoin from the bottom up. So yeah, come to those. Visit denver.space for full details on all of these. We have our events page. We also are still doing our Shamory partnership. If you buy a miner and use code Shamory, then you get a nice little card game that will teach you about Bitcoin mining. And I'm not going to lie, it's actually really fun. And I actually know the couple that made this, and they told me that there's a drinking game version. I still have yet to find the instructions for that, but I might want to do that at our next happy hour or something. Do a little Shamory drinking game, but yeah, use code Shamory if you get a miner with Compass Mining, and you will get a lovely little card game. As always, we want to thank the best caterers in the Bitcoin meetup space, Easy Entrees and Silver Spoons. We should probably still have some out there. Grab some to go if you want. Just a little bit. I only sampled 2 meatballs. The meatballs were great though. Nathan took all of it. But that's about it from us. There's the announcement. We're gonna make the name a little more attractive. And then on August 14th, we're gonna have the hobbyist miner, who I actually just mentioned, I didn't even realize that. We're gonna have the hobbyist miner here to talk, and we're gonna go through all things. We're gonna talk about content. We're gonna talk about mining. And I don't know if I'm allowed to do this or not. I'm gonna do it, and Curtis is gonna have to face it. But I'm gonna talk about altcoin miners with him and try to convince him to become a maxi. But yeah, that's gonna be next month, August 14th. If everyone in the room could help me thank Karoon McIncherry for coming. Oh wait, whoa! I forgot something. The miner giveaway? What? And guess what? Y'all's odds just went up as Neil left too. So hold on, let me shuffle these around, and I'm gonna get. I don't know which one's his, so we might have to do a second draw. Here, Karoon, I'm gonna get you to actually pick one. All right. What does that say?
Number is 674023.
Oh, of course it's Nathan. Nice. Congratulations, Nathan. You are going home with a 90 terahash Antminer S19. Yeah, sure, you can come up here and grab it. I was going to give it to you later, but I mean, no one else screams, so I mean. Oh. Yeah, it's about 700 pounds. I have a cord to give you as well. But yeah, if y'all want to hang out, yeah, you can go sit back down. That's fine. If y'all want to hang out, feel free. Look at the art. All of this art, by the way, is for sale except for the Banksies. You can make an offer. Speaking of which, we need to talk about, can I borrow like $30,000? We'll talk about that later. Yeah, we do have 3 Banksies here. If you're watching online and want to go see some Banksies, come on down to the space. But yeah, all of this is for sale too. We have different prints. It's on scarce.city. And yeah, like I said, food over there. But yeah, thanks for coming, guys. I know it's a smaller turnout, but I always enjoy doing this. So, and if you're online and we're like, man, I wish I would have been there for the nice odds to win the miner, come next month, please. What the hell is going on? But yeah, thank y'all so much. I don't have any music to play us out, so it's going to be a little awkward. But yeah, I'm going to conclude it there. So thanks, guys.